This is the End of the Road podcast with your host, Michael Coco. Exploring the horizons we never touch because we're already there.
Welcome, and thanks for listening. Tonight we're off to Southern Oregon with the psychological counselor and author Dr. Joshua Pritikin. We're talking about his new book called Religion Unburdened by Belief, The Way of Open Inquiry. It's really a fascinating book about the intersection of evidence-based science with beliefs, processes, convictions, faith, along with Joshua's deep interest in internal family systems, shamanism, and a host of other really interesting subjects. It's really kind of in some ways an inquiry not about what to believe, but rather to have a different relationship with belief itself. It was a very fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive that Joshua led us on here today, and we're very grateful to have him on. And without further ado, here's Dr. Joshua. Well, Josh, I think we're on the same page about beliefs and convictions and process beliefs and all that kind of good stuff. But I think it's my belief that by the end of this podcast, I think Professor Lynn's going to have to reel me in a little bit.
No, thanks, Mike. No pressure.
Well, maybe we should start off, Josh, like you do in your book, maybe setting the groundwork about, the different process beliefs versus convictions and how sort of you navigate them.
Okay. And my book kind of starts where James Carse's book left off. His book was, the title is Religious Case Against Belief, and he was proposing to kind of separate or pry apart religion and beliefs. And it seemed like a good idea to me, but like in practice, it wasn't it needed some further refinement in my mind. So that's what I worked on in the first chapter, and because beliefs serve different functions. So you can have a process belief, which is like the beliefs that enable you to do certain practices like meditation. For meditation, you have to believe that, sitting still is possible and controlling your attention is possible, or that you can learn to do that. So that kind of belief is something that makes those beliefs make a practice possible. Other kinds of beliefs, or what I call content beliefs, are beliefs about what the outcome should be. Like you believe that, you should become, like if you practice meditation, then you will definitely become enlightened, or you'll experience bliss, or the cosmological beliefs about whether God exists, or what happens after death. Those kinds of beliefs, those are more about like they're kind of more of like an answer. So they may be reassuring, but they may also limit the possibilities that you're willing to consider. Does that answer your question? Or
yeah, well, let's if you don't mind, can we dive, since you talked about meditation, let's talk a little bit about Buddhism, and then just kind of like how the rubric that you've described there might fit into that. So
okay.
So obviously, let's say you're the Buddha and you're meditating under a tree. So the idea of meditating, can you describe that in terms of what the process belief is with regard to meditation, and then we'll get into sort of the maybe the quote unquote deeper areas. But I just thought that might be interesting to start off with.
Okay, I'm just not sure. Maybe you could clarify your question a bit more. I'm not sure
Sure.
what you're getting at.
Okay. Well, let's say that it, the when people start with a Buddhist practice, for example,
Okay.
at one level, a process is almost synonymous with the word practice. I'm thinking, correct? I
Sure.
mean, because that's what you're doing, and then what the outcome is of that is dependent on well, that's just it. I mean, like you said, then the beliefs come in that, like, if I do this, then I will, get X, Y, or Z. I mean, is that probably where we're looking at, or is it? How would you
Well,
describe that process?
okay.
Just
Maybe the example where it's easy to see is suppose if you go back to the Bible story of Moses and the burning bush, suppose Moses had came to that experience with the belief that a burning bush is an ill omen that is would cause him anxiety. Then those beliefs would constrain his interpretation of the burning bush, and he probably would have gone in a completely different direction. But since he came to that experience without any pre-existing beliefs, it was just kind of an accident, and he kind of had the chance to feel into what it would mean. Then that experience was shaped his beliefs in a different direction than if he came into it with pre-existing beliefs.
okay. So well, let's say Buddha is meditating under the Bodhi tree, and he's visited by Mara, and he sees what all the stuff that Mara does to him, and he touches the earth. And so, is touching the earth, would you say, is that a process, or is that, or do you think that the Buddha has to have some belief in what he is or what he's doing in order to do that?
I mean, you're kind of asking me to guess what's in the Buddha's mind. Like beliefs don't have an inherent function. It's like how you use them. So if Buddha thought that was a process belief, then it is. If he thought it was a content belief, then like it's how you use a belief is really a personal choice. It's a does that make sense? I'm not sure I'm understanding your question correctly.
Sure,
Or
sure. And well, maybe is there a difference between a process belief and an intention? I mean, is there a
interesting. So, I mean, I can have an intention to explain clearly, and let me just think. Process, belief, and intention. Hmm. I hadn't prepared for that
Oh,
question.
that's okay. No, let's move. I apologize for getting in kind of the weeds, but I just I have this sense, though, that it's beliefs all the way down, like turtles all the way down, and I understand that, like, there's convictions, and you don't want to impose your belief on other people, but it's almost hard to get away from, because everything we do, wherever we point our attention to, is almost an intention or a belief, almost. And I'm just
Okay.
having
Yeah. Yeah.
a difficult time separating it. I guess I'm trying to think that. Um,
Well, like in the book, I don't like condemn beliefs or say that you shouldn't have any beliefs or disbeliefs. Like that's not realistic. It's just the degree of conviction you have in them should be justified by the evidence. Like that's really the key thing. Is uh, um, if you don't have like some kinds of beliefs, it's easy to find evidence for. Like if you believe it's hot outside, you can check the thermometer, and the thermometer is evidence to confirm your belief. So that justifies high conviction that it's hot outside. Or like if you have strep throat, or you suspect you have strep throat, then you can or a a lab technician can look under a microscope, and that evidence would confirm or disconfirm the belief, and then you could have high conviction in whether you're sick with strep throat or not. Does that kind of speak to what you're getting at, or?
I'm just the idea of can you have a lack of belief, and what would that look like?
Well, lack of belief. I'm not. That's it's hard to be completely absent of beliefs, but if you have, I don't think. Like beliefs of low conviction. Like you can have many beliefs with like low conviction, and I don't really see that as being an obstacle to, like, that doesn't really constrain your experience much. Just having a bunch of low conviction theories about things.
Yeah. See, Professor Lynn, this is where you have to reel me back. I think I'm going on a deep end here.
Well, the thing that I would think about is that we sort of arrive, and this is my take on it. Josh, feel free to jump in and save me at any point, particularly if you see Mike start to ask me a lot of questions. But my sense is that we arrive in the world, and before we're able to really grasp something as a belief and hold it, as it were, we are sort of subject to all kinds of things in the environment that we grow up in. And so it's really hard. We don't have I would say, the cognitive or emotional ability when we're young to really to understand how to stand back from beliefs, what they really are. They're our worldview, and they're an accepted worldview before we really realize what's happening to us. But then we hit, of course, that wonderful period of adolescence, where there's something about that developmental period that is ignited in us. And suddenly we have this newfound sense of power, that we can stand apart from things that have been quote unquote givens in our world. And some of us wield that as a sort of discrimination, and some of us wield it in less insightful ways, I would say. So I think it is a kind of developmental. I would see it as a developmental process. It's impacted by the culture we grow up in, all kinds of things. But along those same lines, I was going to say that my takeaways at a very high level from reading your book, and I would have to say that it's a pretty dense book, Josh. Very, very readable, but dense in what it has to say. And my takeaways after reading it were that we should all say, first of all, and these are not my phrases, they have a history in our culture, but first of all, never say never, right? Never say never. Hold all things lightly, and I would include in that our beliefs and actually our processes as well. And then the third thing, which I think you have a lot of, if I'm interpreting your work appropriately, Josh, I think it's the 8th chapter, where you're talking about the gift shop. Yeah. And I think you have a lot of fun with that third one in that chapter. Because the third one for me is both buyer and seller should beware. Beware of the assumptions and the unseen cultural filters that we bring to things like politics and religion. And feel free to jump in and save me and say, Lynn, you read it all wrong.
No.
Perfectly fine with that.
I love your takeaway, the way you put it. The only thing I might add is that, I think it's important to hold beliefs lightly in a religious context, but that can also get us into trouble in other contexts, um, like the smoking lobby, was able to sustain, nicotine and in cigarette smoking, and by casting doubt about all the scientific studies, the evidence that built up about how harmful smoking was, and they held off legislation for decades, and so it's important to uh, be context specific about how much conviction you put in beliefs. Like if you always hold everything lightly, then you won't be able to make the correct decision about the harm of smoking cigarettes.
So I think that's a wonderful point, and that really gets us this notion of evidence.
Yeah.
And what evidence, what data are we looking at? And yes, we even find there in some cases that our commitment to being data driven, that doesn't always mean that the data are valid, that the researchers have done their job with all due diligence, but there's a sort of moreness or lessness, and I think that's what you're pointing out. That there's a sort of balance between health, what we could maybe call, and feel free to disagree with this, but healthy skepticism, as opposed to saying, I'm not going to believe anything. I'm just going to figure things out for myself. So I would agree with you on that, and that's a very good distinction.
This is like causing, sort of, I think it's hitting me sort of an emotional level for some reason. So I'm imagining going back to the Buddha, and in juxtaposition what you were saying, Lynn, about holding beliefs lightly. And I get that, because part of me is saying, when Buddha sees Mara and sees the world, he is practicing non-attachment, and he's not being moved by the events of this world, and he's holding it lightly. But another part of me is, that's because he has a belief, and he has to tenaciously cling to that belief, that Mara cannot move him because he's touching something essential in himself, and he has a certain faith. And so this is like the two voices in my head. And we'll talk about Robert Falconer and the spirits and voices a little bit later. But anyway, this is just how it touches me deeply, because it's a paradox within me that obviously has a lot of energy, and that you've struck, Josh. So thank you very much on the book.
When you say Mara is, sorry, I'm not familiar with the story. Can you just give me a recap of who is Mara? And
that's the demon that and or we can use Jesus in the desert, or as a John the Baptist, where they're they're tempted by things.
Okay.
Yeah, and but just basically the Buddha, and again, I could have this wrong, but this is, when he is meditating on the Bodhi tree before enlightenment, before he became quote unquote enlightened, that's like a whole nother subject. But he was approached by Mara, which is basically, you can have that be interpreted a variety of different ways, but there is something about that yes, non-attach, hold things lightly, but on the other hand, he's sitting there, this is his life, this is what he's doing. And part of me is jumping up. No, it's not, you don't hold this lightly. It's precious, do something, it's grateful, this is your life that do you hold on to your life? So like I said, Lynn, you're going to have to reel me back on this. I knew this was going to trigger me. Yeah.
I love how you're putting that, Mike. So, Is it Mike or Michael or
You can
I forget.
just like Josh and Joshua. I can whatever you want to call me is fine.
Okay. So what you're saying is, when in your scenario that you're proposing,
Yeah.
Buddha has like mixed feelings in the sense that
No, I'm saying I do. I'm not saying the Buddha is, but I'm not
okay,
projecting. I'm just saying this is me. This is me reacting to what you're saying about beliefs and
mhm,
holding tightly, because I think certain beliefs that can get you through, well, or like dark night of the soul, like the dark night of the soul. You need, I'm saying you need. I'm not, see, that's a belief. But there is a certain thing that a certain faith that things are going to be all right. That could be a belief that you could.
sure.
Are we clinging to that tenaciously to get through the dark night of the soul, or are we?
But
Was it
I
lightly,
think
or
I think that would be a process belief. So I don't see a problem with that. Like we need that faith to be able to get through the dark night, right? That's important. So, but that doesn't um, that doesn't constrain what we're going to find on the other side of the dark night. Like it's just a way of getting through it. So that would be functioning as a process belief, right?
right? I can, yes.
And it becomes kind of complex. And not to belabor this or just focus on this one story, Mike, but um, the context within which things occur make a lot of difference. Um, so, as I recall the story, and I may get it wrong, but Siddhartha has been engaging in all kinds of aesthetic practices before this moment, this occurrence, this happens. And so there are multiple ways to interpret what these visions of Mara might have represented. They were, as I recall, they were all temptations, right? That certain wonderful things would be given to Siddhartha if he were only to do such and such. And then, the meaning of the resistance of those temptations in the touching of the earth, that could be open to a lot of interpretations. Holding to one's ground, recognizing delusions or illusions as such, and still holding firmly to one's truth. So there are all kinds of multiple interpretations that can come about from that. And there was a dramatic shift. Then once that had occurred, then I think as the story goes, um, you know, uh, uh, the Buddha at that point, Siddhartha, you know, could engage in eating, was more firmly um, uh, in, engrossed in life immediately after that. And so there are multiple levels of interpretation, but if I'm understanding what you're saying, you're asking the question, what about conviction? What about a sense of truth in that moment? Each moment of resisting sort of whether, some might say, oh, well, if you go without food too long, then your system's going to be primed for all kinds of hallucinations or whatever. We can interpret those stories from multiple perspectives. But if we stay true to what the Buddha's practice was, what Siddhartha's practice was, and we say, okay, then he was able, under even weakened conditions, to still stay aligned with some version of selflessness as a truth, as something that had great meaning. And then once that breakthrough had occurred, then the ground on which he sat was one that brought to bear both these high aspirations, these high spiritual aspirations, and what it meant to actually live life. That's my interpretation, and that would not necessarily be other people's interpretation, but you can see how valuable I can see I won't attribute this to you, Mike, but I can see how valuable sort of teasing apart these things are in Josh's book. Um, uh, and really delving into what someone believes about their experience in order to get the layers of meaning that it might have, the layers of quote unquote truth that it might have for them. So, not to make too much of that, but that would be my take on it.
Yeah, that's like you've narrated that transformation from Siddhartha to Buddha very beautifully, and I think that there was learning taking place. Like there was a transformation that took place there that would take some time to unpack. Like it's not a simple thing to uh, understand what happened in those moments.
Yeah. Josh, should we would maybe would it be helpful for you to discuss your as you do in the book internal family systems and how that has enriched your life?
Sure. Um, so internal family systems was developed by Richard Schwartz, who was trained as a family therapist. And what he noticed, he was working with individual clients who had eating disorders, and they would describe their own internal system in a way that was very reminiscent of how Schwartz was used to working with families. And so that's the analogy he made, is that maybe we have just like there's families outside, maybe we have families inside as well. And one of the an easy way to understand this is to consider an occasion when you have mixed feelings. Suppose you're driving to work late, so maybe a part of you, really wants to get to work on time. Another part might be afraid of getting pulled over by the police. Another part might be frustrated by that you didn't leave enough time to get to work. So that you put yourself in this situation, and so internal family systems helps pull apart these mixed feelings into their individual components and helps people get to know each of these parts of themselves, and to develop more harmony and better cooperation in their internal system.
Yeah. It's interesting that you also included a little chapter on Robert Falconer, who I think has an interesting relationship with internal family system. Um, and I'm wondering, does internal family system have a belief associated with it that sort of the family is sort of a sort of like an archetype of a human archetype, that they're what goes on in their mind is in line with the structure of a family, or the family archetype. And then what I find interesting about Robert Falconer and his concept of porosity, as you discuss in your book, is the unattached burdens. And I've read some of his other stuff about that. And this is my own belief, that there's certainly, we have a family archetype, but there's a lot more going on and coming into us than just the family. And I think that's something that I think is really interesting, that Robert Falconer explores, at least.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I just want to acknowledge, you were suggesting that internal family systems has a belief that this analogy holds between the an external family and an internal family, and I think that is a belief, but I would consider it a process belief, because it doesn't presuppose what's supposed to happen, or it's just like a way of exploring your own inner system. It's not um, it's not prescribing a conclusion or an outcome. Like that's something that develops through the process. And then you're also mentioning Robert Falconer, and so the main contribution that he's made is, at least in the original formulation, internal family systems, all the parts are like a part of you. Like if there's any parts that you identify, then those parts are a part of you. And Robert Falconer felt that that wasn't flexible enough. We have to um, accommodate the possibility that we could take in like external energies or external entities that would be somehow present in our system without being a part of us. And what about that was interesting to you, Mike?
Oh, I just think that's more in line with my experience. And you also touch about shamanism and your experience with shamanism, and I guess my experience about the cosmology is it's not a family, and if it is, that the family has nothing to do. I mean, family. It's like there's way more going on than the family, and that's why I find what Robert Falconer is doing to IFS much more interesting than what traditionally IFS is about. And it's just my experience.
Okay.
I'm an N of one. I mean, so I can only say that my experience, but it seems that the things going on are much more interesting than just the family. Although the family's there, but there's just so many more. It's like a forest, and
Yeah,
there might be a couple things here and there, but it's a lot more than just a couple things here and there.
right. Well, and many people appreciate Bob Falconer's work and feel like he's onto something, and like that. I also felt like it's important to include in my book too, like because it does seem like there's more going on than just our own internal parts. Yes.
Yeah, my own internal parts have very little to do with it. No, but maybe would you want to talk about some of how does this? I mean, all these things that you've experienced, internal family systems, the shamanism. What's coming up for you? What would you like to share about all that?
Well, that I feel like that's too much of an open-ended question. Like I could go in any direction. Like,
yes, go in any
a little
direction.
bit?
Go in any direction. I'm sorry, Lynn. Reel me back. I told you you're going to have to help me on this one.
No, I'm very interested in your question too, because there's a lot to absorb in Josh's book, and so anything that he would like to elaborate on would be wonderful.
Okay. Well, in related to Bob Falconer's protocol, I guess you could call it an exorcism protocol for removing
exactly
for removing these entities that are not part of your system. One of the most interesting things that I find about it is the way he defines like the definition of external entities that I mean he makes a distinction between like entities that are burdensome and those that are guides, so that like entities are the ones that uh, could be harmful to you, they might use power dynamics or to try to make you submissive to their will or something like that. Whereas guides are more benevolent or totally benevolent, and that can potentially give you helpful information on occasion. So this way of defining the unattached burdens or UBs like seems to in a way motivate the design of the protocol so that it's kind of circular in a sense that by defining the unattached burdens in the particular way that he does is kind of guides his the method he uses to remove them. Like it guides the design of that, and like this thinking that circularity is I find kind of puzzling and delightful at the same time. Like I'm not sure what to make of it.
Have you experienced that in your own life or your own practice? The working with unattached burdens in the way that he does?
I have on occasion. Like I've had clients that bring in what seems like an unattached burden to me, and then I have tried to follow his protocol as best I can, and it seems to be effective. So I mean my experiences are limited, but yeah, that's what I could say.
So for someone who's a real novice with this particular perspective, of course, without violating any kind of confidentiality at all, could you make up an example for us about how such a thing would occur in a therapeutic situation? How would you know that that was what was happening, and how would you think about how to proceed?
Well, so the diagnostic question is pretty straightforward. You would you just be working with a client doing parts work, and then you might encounter a part that seems to be causing trouble, and then you can request the client to ask that part is that a part of you? Like is that part of your system, or is it an external entity? And that's like the key question in my mind, uh, because if it's just if it's a part of the client, then you would want to stay within the original IFS protocol and get to know it and understand where it got that, where it learned that behavior from. How it's trying to protect the client by doing that behavior, which the parts can have all kinds of dysfunctional behaviors that they learned when the client was in a different situation. Maybe they were younger and helpless, and had were where their parents were not as supportive as they could be. They were maybe engaged in a divorce or substance abuse. Any number of awful traumas could prompt the adoption of behaviors that, as an adult, would be completely inappropriate, but the parts are still persisting because that's what they learned when they were young. But if the client says that this is a malicious energy that is not part of me, that I have just taken on somehow, then that's when I would shift over to using Falconer's protocol and guide the client towards removing that malicious energy from their system.
Okay. That's helpful to hear you describe sort of how that would arise and what you were listening for, and to understand it better, and that you would know at that point or feel it right to pivot to a different approach, to dealing, or to a clear approach targeting that particular experience for them. That's helpful to know. It's very helpful. Mike, did that get at kind of what you were asking?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting, and what came up as with how this would interact with this process and conviction rubric that we sort of started our discussion with, and then especially in the context of I know you have an interest in, for lack of a better word, plant medicines and the such. How that would come into play in that kind of experience, or not.
Okay, that's a very open-ended question again, Mike. Can you narrow that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I mean, the bigger question is how who do you envision reading your book, and what would you like them to get out of this? I
Okay.
just to step back even further a little bit, so we can dive in. I'm sorry, that's another open-ended question.
No, that I have an answer for. So, I mean, the book.
Josh, you see what my life is like with these podcasts? Are you getting a feel for what my life is like with these? No.
I'm a little more feral today than usual. I'm admitting.
No, I love this part about Mike. I absolutely love it. Not a part in the sense that you're talking about it, though. Okay.
I'm an unattached bird.
It's fully integrated into Mike.
I'm your unattached bird.
Okay, so who's the book for? Well, it's for people that are not satisfied with the religious traditions that are on offer. Anyone who feels like they're in the spiritual but not religious category. Anyone who, atheists could be a good candidate for this book, because it doesn't ask them to believe anything. They're just they may be like, if they have strong disbeliefs, they may be challenged to relax those a little bit to let in the possibility of process beliefs. But so that those people may benefit from the book. And let's see, what was the other part of your question? What should people get out of it? So my goal in writing this book is to give people more autonomy. I feel like, at least in my own life, that accessing religious experiences was quite a challenge for me. Like it was haphazard, accidental. And what I mean by religious experiences is like a sense of being connected to something larger than myself, or beauty and awe. What I'm trying to do with this book is give people more autonomy and make it much more predictable and reliable, so that you can put it on your calendar. Like, okay, I'm gonna take Saturday and really enjoy my Saturday and make it encounter a religious experience, and so that it's much you have much more self-efficacy and about in your personal development.
You know what I'm curious about, and we don't have to go here if you don't want to, but you have very famous ancestors, and how do you think, and I don't know, could we bring them in the discussion perhaps about in any way you would like about the religious practices, or how they would interact with this book or anything? And I'd be just kind of curious.
Well, Mike, I think you're referring to the in the acknowledgments I mentioned Dr. Michael Greger, who's a nutritionist, and the reason I mention him is there's a family connection. My grandfather, Nathan Pritikin, helped to address his grandmother was almost dying from cardiovascular disease, and Nathan Pritikin's work in diet and lifestyle helped her to live some decades longer than the doctors had estimated she had left to live. And so that actually prompted Dr. Michael Greger to go into medicine. But the parallel I see is that we're both trying to give people more autonomy. Dr. Michael Greger tries to connect people with the primary, like the peer-reviewed literature, primary sources, and instead of people relying on the interpretation of doctors or nutritionists. So, and in my work, I'm trying to, in my book, I'm trying to make religious experiences that have been sometimes regulated by gatekeepers or priests, trying to make those directly available to people, so increase the autonomy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, I'm with you all in.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I I apologize for kind of going in the deep end. It's just that I kind of have a sense that I have friends that were abused by priests. So I mean, it's just like I mean that I've got sort of that emotional reaction. But on the other hand, my senses of um, trying to not throw out the baby with the bathwater too, and that's why I find what your process belief is something I hadn't heard of before. So I'm very intrigued by it, about how to use this. But on the other hand, part of me is, science is just another belief system, and it's going to be, what we think of as science is, with the advent of, quantum physics and everything is not going to be, is going to be outdated. And I wonder if, like, when we come full circle, that it's going to be animism, kind of where we started from almost, and that science isn't going to be, but yet, what have humans achieved with all this, peer-reviewed stuff? I mean, a lot. We've tore up the planet. Would it have been better? I don't know. I mean, it's just, it's just, that going in circles, perhaps. Sorry.
It's interesting. It's interesting because there is this. I'm going to block on the theorist's name at this point, but this notion that a new paradigm. Thomas Kuhn. There we go. It came.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thomas Kuhn, and the notion of these revolutions that occur where paradigms start off as radically new and as almost a reaction against a previous paradigm. And at first there's a great deal of battling about it. And then the revolution sort of takes hold, and it becomes the dominant the new one becomes the dominant paradigm. And then lo and behold, some period later, that same process takes that one on. And right now, there's a budding group of, and this does tie in, Josh, to your. I was looking at your credentials, and you had your Ph.D., I think, in quantitative psychology. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And then at some point you transitioned, and you're doing some things with therapy. And maybe you were earlier. I don't know. Some quantitative psychologists are involved in that sort of research, but in any event, that notion now, we seem to have been living in a world for quite some time where it was thought that physics represented all in some ways, and a very science-oriented perspective, with consciousness at best being what some people called an epiphenomenon of the brain. But we're now beginning to see that too. There are some the sort of gaps in some of those scientific theories, particularly with regard to consciousness, are really taking hold. And there are a couple of very accomplished scientists and philosophers who work with computers and have been instrumental in creating very innovative things in computer science, who are now arguing very cogently that consciousness is first, consciousness isn't second. So it's interesting how these paradigms shift. But to come back to you, Josh, so you started off in quantitative.
Hold on, Lynn.
Okay.
Maybe you're thinking of Donald Hoffman. Is that who you're describing? Because he definitely has the consciousness first kind of approach.
Yes, there is Federico Fagan, who has won awards. I think he was the first to develop a microprocessor, Intel, one of the Intel. And then the philosopher is a European, and I'm going to block on his name for a second, but it will probably come to me in a short time.
Okay.
Bernardo Kastrup.
Bernardo Kastrup. Thank you. Oh, bless your heart. That's wonderful. Yes. So if you enjoy any of that and haven't read them, you'd probably like them, Josh.
Yeah, like I say, I think he's the one. Bernardo Kastrup was saying like that everything is conscious, or panpsychism. He's an advocate of that?
He's an idealist. He's like idealism. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about the. I know there's like distinctions between all these theories.
Yeah.
I don't really have a strong position on the. Yeah, like I'm not a physicist, so. But I just wanted to respond briefly, Mike. You seem to be suggesting that there was like an oscillation between going towards science and then away from science. And Lynn, the way you framed it is that also kind of suggesting that there's transitions between paradigms. We started out with behaviorism at the beginning of the 19, about 100 years ago. Behaviorism was very popular, and then we've kind of the pendulum has swung the other direction. But I would suggest that we're becoming more integrated, like that there isn't really a necessary divide, or it's like I feel like the science can be reconciled with religion. Like there isn't any like these don't necessarily have to be in conflict.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you say a little bit more, Josh? Because that gets back to what my original, very basic question was, and that was about. I mean, something was there for you at some point because you were in quantitative psychology, and now you're writing about things that have to do with the processes involved, the very human processes involved in sort of dealing with oneself in the most basic sense, the psychological and emotional parts of you, in an interpersonal context. And I was just curious about, has that, even during your quantitative psychology, your doctoral training, was that interest there then, or did that develop later for you? I'm just trying to put together the quantitative psychology and now you're a therapist.
Yeah. So it was definitely a hobby early on. Even from I started meditating when I was a teenager, and I've been I kept that up so all these years. But like professionally, I got into software development, and then shifted to quantitative psychology, which is emphasis on statistics and experimental design. So it's very science focused. I love science, and I've been trying to reconcile kind of a scientific way of thinking with our interior emotional life, and that's part of what we know where this book came from is that aspiration to combine these two different ways of thinking about life.
Yes, and that I think that really comes through in the way that you've structured the book, and the fluidity with which you talk about some of these processes in relationship to the framework of your book. And Mike, did you Mike, did you lose your train of thought?
Oh, no, I was going to be mischievous when you all were talking about consciousness. But then I thought, well, I shouldn't probably talk to two therapists and psychologists and about what I want to say is basically like, I think the more interesting question is the consciousness even mine? Is it external or internal? Or am I the dreamer or the one being dreamed? I mean, that's the sort of world I live in, although I shouldn't probably say that to two
Oh, see,
psychologists.
you would love the work of Federico Fagan, and you would appreciate listening to his talks, and Bernardo Kastrup as well. So,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think an important thing to keep in mind when you're considering these theories of consciousness is what is the mechanism? Like, there's got to be some way that like some information, like what difference does consciousness make, and like how does that difference happen? Because like if it's panpsychism, then like if everything's conscious, then what difference does, like what's the difference between conscious and unconscious? Or like how does consciousness contribute to perception and action? What's the difference between, say, a robot that's not conscious and a robot that is conscious? Like what does consciousness add to that scenario?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it is one that has come up, that at least, as I recall, Fagan has addressed. So again, you might really enjoy some of his talks,
Yeah.
because you two are so science-based, so you might really enjoy that. But yeah, for some folks, the notion is that consciousness is primary because it is the sphere in which all the other forms of knowledge that we have blossom, that they arise to the surface and are known,
Yeah.
and that without that, these other forms of knowledge we would not be aware. If we think of consciousness as awareness, then I think your question leads into, but when does awareness end? And of course, some of the mystics, and now a few a few very brave scientists are saying it may be primary, and it may be the one thing that doesn't end. So it's interesting, but we are far afield from what we were talking about. Mike, you did this. I'm sure you did this to me.
I told you I'd have to be
You
reeled back
opened the
in.
door, and I walked right through it. I'm so sorry, Josh.
Oh, well, what about your book? We should we should end on what sort of is the takeaway perhaps that we haven't discussed yet that you really think is important to share?
Well, I mean, everything in the book it's kind of autobiographical in the sense that I've, personally experimented with everything that I put in the book, and I continue to attend these Santo Daime ceremonies where I feel part of it is that the ceremonies are training me to how to be present in challenging situations, and then I can bring that ability, that presence, into other aspects of my life, like talk therapy. And so I that's one of the things I offer is the talk therapy. So if you feel like, or if anyone in the audience feels like they would like to benefit from that, the work I've done to bring all of my presence to conversations and to really be with people, then that's available.
Yeah. If you and I guess you well, I guess I already know the answer to this, but wouldn't it be interesting if you could combine sort of talk therapy with a Sanadime ceremony? I just think that would be so interesting, and in a way, just um, uh, it just seems, because it just seems to me that there's so much, there would be so much more shared than just words, but energies and sort of beings and all this things that go on, and then you've got the dancing with it, and um, I'm just wondering if obviously, well, I mean, you can do that, but if like a new paradigm, okay, I'm going out, but like if psychology could sort of evolve from talk to more expansive things, uh, that I think your book is pointing at in a way, and a sharing, a participation, not sort of a you know um, the old the old model where you've got a therapist and then a client, but something that's sort of more expansive and participatory, and to bring all this in. Which is probably what a Sanadime ceremony is. It's just not therapy, maybe. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's a intriguing aspiration. Like one thing I do try to do in the book is show the parallel structure between um, what happens in internal family systems, and then showing how that can be applied to meditation, and then showing how meditation is similar in some ways to what's happening in Santo Daime ceremony. So I do try to show those parallels and bring them out.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you also did a wonderful job of pointing out a couple of instances in which religious ceremonies have, over time, engaging without a firm anchoring in reality, resulted in great harm. And I think that was an important thing to point out, that things can go awry. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
You mean in the context of Santo Daime, or just like in the
No,
larger?
in the larger context of becoming engulfed in um, uh, a particular religious point of view that's also about um, letting down one's boundaries for a particular person that seems to hold special power.
Hmm.
You gave a couple of really good examples that really point out the sort of dangers of some of that as well. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. I have a whole appendix on all the various ways that teachers and students can, get into these um, like manipulative situations, and some case studies of I guess there was a psychologist who went to a retreat where she was um, hoping to learn how to work with psilocybin with clients, and things went really badly. Is I maybe that's the story you're thinking of?
yes, and the also the notion that Mike brought up about what would it mean to have someone with a professional background who was present in that in a situation, but somewhat outside of it, who knew something about the ceremonies, who knew something about, let's say, the process work of the religion itself, but who also stood professionally apart from it and sort of had the correct boundaries, the appropriate boundaries in mind. I don't know if that's where you were going with it, Mike, or not, but that idea that there could be that sort of oversight by a
Yeah.
professional.
That's interesting. I kind of was more not nobody detached. I didn't want anybody to be detached and because
Okay.
I don't think that's possible, especially when Mother Ayahuasca or something comes into play. There's no boundaries, or at least not for me anyway. So, and that's a problem actually, but that's another issue. But yeah, you're thinking, Josh.
Well, I mean, Lynn, you've touched on the topic of like how do we approach these um, religious paths in a way that's safety, that preserves autonomy and boundaries, and there's many. I address that in the book in many different ways. So, like I'm a bit at a loss as to which. I'm not sure which. What to deepen our discussion with. I'm not sure which direction to go into.
I was, and you did a wonderful job of that, of pointing that out, and you did so in a very light-handed way. You weren't heavy. I didn't think you were. This is my opinion. I'll own it. I didn't think you were being heavy-handed. I thought you were
Okay.
pretty egalitarian in how you handled the different um, points that you were making. But I was thinking more about, I think, what Mike was bringing up in terms of oversight, and it didn't occur to me, but I can understand as he's talking about it that there are some of these experiences um, that um, would not be amenable to having that person, a person on the outside, sort of there,
Mm-hmm.
because it is
Like in
such an
the
immersive experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I touch on in the book is to recognize that the state-run programs like we have in Oregon and now Colorado, maybe other states, they require a like sober trip sitter as a like a safety, ostensibly for safety, but like I mm, discuss that with some skepticism because like that like having like it creates some like the two, like if you have one person that's sober and one person that's intoxicated, it creates can create power dynamics. It can like my position is that it probably works better if we can approach these experiences in solitude for the most part, and then we avoid all the problems with gurus and teachers and facilitators, like taking advantage of people that are intoxicated or becoming, having, their egos expand to galactic size, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's kind of more of a practical thing, I think. Just trying to keep people out of trouble. They don't go running off. um, but well, Josh, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about either your work or your clinical practice or um, or just anything?
Yeah, I mean the two websites are connected, but the book's website is unburdened.biz, biz, and then my talk therapy practice is Estrela Counseling, and the Estrela is a Portuguese word that means star, and if you can or if you just look up my name, you can find both of the sites easily. Should pop right up.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing this sharing this very thought-provoking book. As you can see, it really, made me question a lot of things, which is very good. So I'm very grateful for it.
There was a lot to take in. There was a lot to take in, and certainly a lot to discuss. And I think that's part of why we had such a wide-ranging discussion today.
Yeah.
So it was an enjoyable, interesting read. Not for the faint of heart, but it was a very enjoyable read.
Okay. Well, if there's more you want to discuss about it, then you're welcome to invite me back on.
Okay, great.
Do round
great.
2.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll keep in touch, and I would love to maybe go to well, we'll talk about this offline.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time, Josh.
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Josh.
Yeah. Nice to talk to you.